My name is Mallory Kelly. So the purpose of us is really just to make sure that whatever's happening outside of the classroom is solid, because we know that what's happening outside really impacts your ability to perform inside of the classroom. We know when family is causing stress, you're distracted in class. We know that when our sneaky link is causing problems, we're distracted in class, right? So we just want to make sure that if there's anything that's causing a disruption in any way, and when you get to college, there's lots of disruptions, that we can help iron out those kinks for you. So today, I kind of nominated myself to do this, but Ms. Delita Brown and I decided that it would be a good idea because of the timing to just talk about what it's like to identify how you know you're ready for finals. And so it's going to be kind of what I refer to as run-of-the-mill, very standard content, but just identify these pieces in yourself, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. You all know that. The way that you learn is different than the friend that you might have with you here today, right? And so the way that you're learning is also correlated to the things that are happening in your peripheral too. How much are you absorbing? How much are you retaining? Because maybe you're over-functioning because we're working too. These are all things that really are variables into how much we can, how can we really prepare for an exam? Or that's like a joke. How can we prepare for multiple exams that are happening at the same time if we have so much that's happening? So let's figure out a strategy on how we can get that going. So one of the ways that my office specifically likes to introduce students to just getting through specifically that first semester, is identifying first and foremost your learning style. There's 4 specific standards. Think about if you're somebody, I think about it in terms of like music. Are you somebody that gets the feels when you hear a song? Or are you somebody that's very cerebral and we think about the words as soon as we hear it? Like, these kind of things are how we're learning. So it's all very, very specific to you. You might be somebody that doesn't think and doesn't feel. Maybe you immediately just start tapping. All of that plays a role into how you're going to retain information and truly your comprehension. So I think it would be best for those of you who have not heard anything about learning styles. I would not advise that at this very moment. It feels like we probably have other priorities, but maybe during break you can watch a YouTube video on it to at least get a little bit more acclimated if that's not something that you've been introduced to, so that we can be prepared for spring semester if that's not something that you know. But I just wanted to touch on this for all of us who have not heard of this. Know your learning style, because that learning style is also how you're going to take notes when you're in class before we even get to the point of assessments. So this specific information and content talks about how, like, prioritization. And again, I'm gonna go back to my office. I'm gonna do that a lot. Huge shout out to my office. We talk about prioritization and time management. And in you preparing for your finals or any assessments, you have to first know, where do I stand on the comprehension level? If I'm in a chem, or even, let's just say something that's less kind of like, less of a go-to, not a chem, not a bio. If I'm in an English class, how am I prepping for that? How am I prepping for getting ready to write a paper, or what am I doing? So I think the first thing everybody needs to know is, where am I right now? If I'm on a scale of I feel very confident to what the F is happening right now, let me figure out and categorize where my starting point is. We have to be real with ourselves. So as a coaching unit, it's important for us to deal with all of you where you are, not where we want you to be. He mentioned some strengths and then he used the word specifically weaknesses. I don't really care for that word because I don't know necessarily that it's our weaknesses. I look at them, Keyshawn, as areas of opportunity. That's all. And so I think the next piece that we have to consider is, you said, if I know something, I know if this is a strength, I got it. I'm not gonna worry about it so much. But see, that's what we have to figure out while we're here. How do we know? What is it that you know? We're going back, we're looking at previous exams and we're seeing, where did we do really well? And maybe where are some areas of opportunity? But if you're like me, I want to speak to the students who are only here because we have a checkbox item and we have to be here as a requirement. I want to speak to those students. If you're not somebody who is going to go back and look at exams, if you're somebody who's like, I'm just trying to finish this class, I hate this, I need you to, at minimum, just consider and categorize the specific content materials that you do know really well. And the way in which I do that, if this acronym can help you at all as an assessment tool, so just as a way to figure out where are you right now and how will I move forward in all of my classes and feeling more confident. So R, reporter, I, interpreter, M, manager, and E, educator. So what that stands for and all of this, again, I told you all, you can read these slides on your own, but this stuff is very kind of, all of you are telling me that you already do this, but a way to get through it is first reporting your information gathering. Somebody is essentially feeding you things and you're either listening or you're not. We're taking notes a little bit here and there. It's just like somebody on the news. Like I'm listening to somebody else report out. Okay? And then the I, interpreter, once you go up to that next level, you maybe read a few things, or maybe we're rereading a chapter, or we're rereading notes because a quiz is coming up. Interpreters, how well am I comprehending this information? You're talking to yourself or you're talking to a class information buddy. Does anybody in here use an information buddy or have somebody in class who can at least tell them a little something if they missed class? What happens if you're sick? What are you gonna do if you weren't in class? What happens, and I'm being honest, I'm being real because I was a college student, what happens on those mornings where it's super cold and super rainy and I don't wanna go? So how can I have an information buddy as a just in case, being proactive? So I would suggest maybe, you know, having a friend or somebody in class who maybe you see, you know how we're almost kind of programmed where in grade school we were assigned to a seat and then after a while everybody just kind of naturally goes into place. It's just like that, don't you think now? Even everybody kind of sits in the same place no matter what, even if it's a huge lecture hall. So you're gonna see the same person. So maybe can you be brave in that moment and maybe come midterm, ask a person, hey, if I miss class, can I text you? Is that fine? And vice versa, just so I can know what I missed. But that's also a part of that interpreter opportunity because then we get a chance to figure out how much do I really know? Oh, hey, this is what professor or my instructor talked about really quickly, and your ability to recite that, you don't even realize, that's interpretation. It doesn't necessarily need to be 100% accurate. You've just absorbed a certain amount of content, your brain kept it, and you were able to kind of purge that back real fast for somebody else. The next level is management. You're managing that information, and not only are you managing it, but you're able to correctly compartmentalize that. If I'm in a physics class that, again, I either do want to be in or I don't want to be in, and now we're talking RPMs or RVs or whatever the unit specific measurement is for physics, it's been a long time, and I now am not only able to consider the content that I've heard, that I've reviewed, that I have looked at numerous times, but I'm now even compartmentalizing that information in comparison to the English final 2 that I'm studying for, my chem final, my history 1111 final for my first year students or beyond. So I am able to have all of this information in my mind, compartmentalize it, and pull it out. I don't know, I think you guys are too young to know what a Rolodex is. Yes, of information. If your mind was just kind of like a real life paper Google, you can literally go through it, pick it out as you need it. So that's high level. Once you get to management, that's very high level. You specifically are able to pull whatever content you need. Again, does not mean we're perfect. And then education is the highest tier, the educator. That means not only am I reporting back to somebody else because I've interpreted that information and now I'm managing it, but now I can teach it to somebody else. Again, very low level, right? Like you don't need to be the professor, but I'm able now to talk to you about the 2 chapters or 3 chapters we just discussed in our study group. And I can do that confidently because I know it like the back of my hand. It's now easily coming to my brain and to my consciousness the way that I'm speaking to you right now. And that's where we want to be. Now again, in order for us to get there, it's challenging, but we can do that. So if there's anything that you take away that specific acronym, RHYME, is how we want to figure out where are we. In order to prep for finals, you have to be intentional about the way that you're attacking them, because then we end up with students in our office who are failing and they're saying, I didn't know that this was going to happen, what do I do next? So how are we intentionally setting ourselves up for success? How are we intentionally making sure that we're prepped? We're intentionally doing that by designing or borrowing from our information buddy a plan. And so what that can look like is, like our friend Keyshawn said, are we starting to look at the things that we know already and then comparing them to the things that we know we're not so comfortable with? So let's put a little category and a block together of, hey, what looks good so far? What do I feel good about? And then within that, we can start making subcontexts. Like we can start making, has anybody heard of a concept map? Concept maps are awesome. I'm super visual. I'm a very visual learner. It's really challenging for me to have someone talking at me the way that I'm talking at you right now. I zone out. You got 15 minutes in me and then I'm done. So I think it's really important, and I don't know how all professors here, I know again that's not a one-size-fits-all situation, but how are you then breaking down 14 weeks of material for up to, especially for my first-year students, 5 to 6 classes? How are you breaking down all that content? A great way to do that is to be able to chunk. I want all of you to understand that in order to do well, or even just at an elementary remedial level, you have to make sure that you're prepared for something, and that something is, you know, you're going to be tested. So how do we do that? We're putting the material together, we're then deciding, we're filtering out then what are we doing well, what are we not doing well, and can you put into practice then the specific areas of content like a math class where you know you might need some extra practice. We have a study lounge over in University Hall. One of the things that gets us through, gets me through, and Nigel is going to disagree because this doesn't help him at all, but I need to be in a very specific space. If I'm not at the point anymore where I'm studying for anything, but let's just even say this talk today. I did this, it's not a part of my job every day to do this, but I have to be ready to have a conversation with a group of people. In order for me to do that, I've already told you, I low-key might have ADHD, not sure, but might. And so in order for me to stay on task, I use this cube. Game changer. If anybody has difficulty focusing, this guy, Amazon, $10. And I can set it for 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes. And oh my God, has anybody ever used the Pomodoro method to study? Are you familiar with setting up 25 minutes of studying at a time and then taking a 5 to 10 minute break? If you're not on your phone, not on an iPad, not on a laptop, and you just focus for 25 minutes, I swear to you, you will be amazed at how much you can get done. And this little guy, if you have, like seriously, if this is something that you would benefit from, please get it from Amazon. I mean it, game changing. I got introduced to the Pomodoro technique, the idea of chunking small sections of time, because I couldn't focus while I was in grad school. And so I was like, oh my gosh, if I just, because I'm somebody who will grab my phone in a heartbeat, I would be on Instagram doing a doom scroll, wouldn't even realize it until I started to become more focused. But that also plays into where I'm studying, where am I sitting, where am I actually trying to get things accomplished. That really matters. Let's make sure that number one, we have minimal distractions. For those of us who are living in the dorms, residence halls, I can't imagine how distracting that might be for us with a lot of people around. Those of us who are living at home maybe with dogs or whatever, with maybe small children still at home, how distracting that might be. So just know we have opportunities and spaces on campus, both near our office in University Hall, the library, and let me tell you, I cannot speak to the Marietta campus because I'm not as familiar with hideaways, but for many of you who may not know, the ALC is a lick. Okay, there are so many hideaways. Does everybody know about like the little cubbies in the ALC in the Academic Learning Center? Oh my gosh. Like that place has so many empty rooms. It is absolutely amazing to make sure that you can just hide if anybody's looking for you. If you just need an hour to just focus. So just make sure that you're setting yourself up with like a comfortable seating area, all these things that you probably know but don't realize can also be distracting. If you're sitting in a seat, maybe like a bar stool that doesn't have a back, you're probably not gonna sit there very long. Things I have to say to you, but you probably already know. So I think we had a friend who discussed this already, who just talked about repetition in something like a math class. But what if you have a foreign language? It's kind of the same thing. So we wanna make sure that we bring back that practice of chunking. So maybe we're recalling set groups of information that we don't know as well, we're not feeling as strong in. We want to make sure that we can actively retrieve that information quickly. We can then go through that, execute through it quickly. And then how can you create some reminders? I don't know if everybody here is a fan of flashcards. It's a heavy lift on the front end. Making them can be time consuming. And then making them to actually be useful, something else entirely. I would advise and recommend everybody either use, this is a moment where AI can be awesome. ChatGPT can be your best friend in creating a specific, oh, I'm so serious. I mean, we all, none of us are idiots here. We know that ChatGPT is used, or other AI tools. How can you use it to actually be helpful? I want you to use the technology and the resources that you have available to you, and AI is something that is now available to all of you. If you're not using it correctly, though, I imagine it can get you in trouble. And by correctly, I mean that. I'm not saying fraudulent, I'm saying you might type in, how do I get this problem correct? Or some type of grammatical error or something like that. It's not gonna help you. You can specifically type in, I am a beginner. Teach me this, and it will. So the more specific you are, or please create note card templates for, and then enter in the chapter you're reading in the book, the that you needed to explain to you. Use it for you to get to that next step. So there are ways in which you can really be helping yourself if you're not somebody who wants to actually write out flashcards. And then somebody else mentioned this already, but just taking quizzes. So if you're somebody that is okay with using old quizzes that you have, you can also ask your professors. Let me tell you a little secret if you didn't know this, your professors actually want to see you. That could be the difference in a letter grade. I don't know if many of you know that. So they have office hours for a reason, and so when you see them, that means to them that you're invested, and I swear to you, literally swear to you all my life, the things that you might find out from office hours, they might tell you something in a one-on-one that they didn't actually say in class. So if it's something that you would be open to, please go see your professors. But we talked about just making sure that if you're somebody who has passed exams, please review those and get yourself to a point where you're identifying those trouble areas. If you need to seek clarification, this might be a place where maybe you don't talk to the professor because you're all talked out, or maybe you're somebody who feels uncomfortable and you need to seek another avenue. Is that information buddy from class gonna come in? Or how many of us have gone or heard of supplemental instructors, SI? This could be where that comes from. I think it's also important to know, we just talked about AI and how that can help. That's something that's major, I know, at this point in time. But also something that I used 20 plus years ago that I know is still a major hit. Do any of you use Khan Academy? Yeah. It's so good, it's such a good tool. So just make sure that you're utilizing every resource possible if we don't feel comfortable, and we're a resource. And I just want to shout out real quick the Smart Center for all of us who either do go or have yet to go. I just learned this 2 weeks ago. Students who go into the Smart Center might come one time, but then don't come back because they've had an ill experience with one of the tutors. And what I learned is that students can ask for another person. You can ask for another tutor to come. So if it's just like finding a barber or a hairstylist, if that's not your jam, it's not your jam. It's not a good fit. It's not gonna work. So you can ask for someone else and they will abide by that easily, no issue. But just so that all of you know, if it's not a match, if we're not swiping right, please swipe left and ask for someone else, okay? Please, 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 just know that that's an option. We've all talked about practicing our exams, so we know how to do that. We need to make sure too, when we're practicing any exam or we're reading specialized content. Some of us might be the folks that have to use different color highlighters. Some of us might be like the different color pen people. Some of us might be folks that don't need to write anything down and you just read the content over and over. You are an angel. I don't know how you manage doing that, but I do realize that there are different techniques and strategies to get through this. And then Finally, just make sure that you adjust your schedule and plan according to what's most important. So for some of you, the most important might be we're not doing so great in a certain class, and maybe that's where we're starting, and we want to make sure all our time and effort is pointed there, and then we'll focus on that class that we're doing the best in at the very last place of our scheduling plan. And then lastly, I just want to talk about this really quickly because this goes back to what Kiana mentioned to you in terms of coaching. How many of us are stressed out about taking exams of any kind, let alone finals? My whole life I've had test anxiety. Well, if you didn't know this, test anxiety is so disruptive that really has an impact on how you're going to sit through your exam. Your test anxiety that has nothing to do with just a generalized anxiety, your test anxiety can distract you from reading through your problems. Did you know that? So now your neck and your back is super stressed. I can't focus, I can't sit still. So let's talk about kind of just really quickly, as we're getting a plan, I'm just gonna pretend that all of you are gonna take away from this that we're gonna start creating a plan or build out on the plan that we already have. And we're gonna take some study breaks, and in between them, we're gonna do some breathing exercises. But no matter what, as of today, make sure that you're incorporating some wellness into your day-to-day. So I just want to make sure that you know too, as soon as you start your exam on those days, like let's go there first, as soon as you start to feel like super rigid and tight, you better take 20 seconds right at that moment and just breathe 4 times. Like just breathe really deeply 4 times in that moment, because we really need our brain, we really need our ability to just stay calm, to be the center. So in those moments, like just give yourself a quick break, because everybody is experiencing a certain amount of angst. So can you just quickly say to yourself, even in that second, hey, I'm not the only one, and then move on, right? But while you're studying, make sure that you're taking the opportunities to do something that you enjoy, whether that's sports and rec, whether that's just stepping outside of wherever it is that you lay your head to get some fresh air. We want you to do well here. We also want you to be doing well as a person. That's really, our job exists to ensure that you're doing well, not just okay. We don't want people just surviving. We know you have to get through it, but how can you get through it in the best way that you can? That also comes into making sure that you're doing some type of exercise. I love a donut. I don't necessarily love exercise, so my wellness is the donut. Go for what you know. Nobody here is gonna say anything else. And then the healthy diet and sleep. Also, some of us work crazy hours. Is it okay for you maybe to be communicative with bosses if you haven't already? Can we talk to our bosses? Can we talk to supervisors to make sure that people know you have exams at a certain point in time? That's called being proactive. That's called taking initiative. That's called making sure you're not expecting anybody to be a mind reader. And what we come to find out is that people are reasonable human beings, and they understand and they want us to be successful too. I already mentioned where you can find us. We are on both campuses. Here we're sandwiched in between the English building and the library in University Hall. On Marietta campus, we're in Norton Hall. And then lastly, I just want to thank you for coming.